Okay, good evening and welcome to the Town Administrator Selection Panel. This is a subcommittee of the Select Board, and this is our first in-person and remote hybrid meeting for Monday, November 27th. Time is 6:14. We're in the Select Board Conference Room. And this meeting is going to be recorded. If anyone's making a recording of the meeting, that's quite all right. You just need to let somebody know. In attendance tonight, we'll go around the room. This way everybody can kind of introduce themselves again. Again, my apologies for being late. My name is Doug Moglen. I'm the Select Board Chairman.
John Coward.
Greg Hamlin.
Bob Landis, Chief of Police.
Nadine Tignoni, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer.
Celeste St. Jacques, Town Moderator.
Jim Putnam.
Okay.
I'm Bob Mercier.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming and volunteering and being on this subcommittee. I think it's going to be a very worthwhile process. And, you know, your expertise and everything is going to be put to the test, I think, a little bit to find a replacement for our outgoing CAO. And we're supposed to, next is to introduce our panel members and the roles they represent. We've kind of done that already. And for those playing along at home, I'm here as a designated member of the Select Board. The police chief and the moderator are here. We have and then 3 citizen appointees to the subcommittee. I'm also supposed to remind everyone that we have to get sworn in too. So at the town clerk's office, probably before the next meeting, once we've elected officers for this subcommittee and conduct any significant business. Has anybody done that already?
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah.
3. Well, two of the citizens and the police chief. Great. It's fantastic. So the next on our agenda is the election of committee chair and vice chair. I'm kind of just moderating this meeting as the designated Select Board member. So at this time, I entertain a motion for chair of this subcommittee.
I'll make a motion to nominate Jim Putnam as chairman.
I'll second that.
Will you serve?
Sure.
Motion's made and seconded. It would, just because the meeting's hybrid, we do that in a roll call vote. So Doug Moglen, yes?
John Coward, yes.
Greg Hamlin, yes.
Bob Landis, yes.
Celeste St. Jacques, yes.
Jim Putnam, yes.
Okay. And then we would need a motion for the election of a vice chairperson.
I'll make a motion that Celeste Jacques be the vice chairman.
I'll second that.
Very well. Roll call vote. Doug Moglen, yes?
John Coward, yes.
Greg Hamlin, yes.
Bob Landis, yes.
Celeste St. Jacques, yes.
Jim Putnam, yes.
And that's unanimous. Jim, you want to take over the meeting from here?
You know, it'll probably be easier if you just kind of go through the bullet items there. I don't think we're going to do any deliberative stuff here tonight. You know, unless you feel uncomfortable, why don't you continue on?
No objection, sir. So everyone got a copy of the open meeting law guide and educational materials. So we need to read through that at your leisure. What that there's a lot here. Short story is this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 member board, right?
I'm not sure. I'm
6 or 7. I don't know. But anyway, don't have meetings in the hallway or start calling each other up and discussing things when you might constitute a quorum, right? We'll do everything by the book in open session. And an executive session as required under the open meeting law. The rest of it you can get in here, but that's the short story right there. All votes will be by roll call, and since we're doing this in a hybrid fashion, every single vote we take needs to be by roll call so that they're recorded and people can watch the recording and know. And if we don't have any members online, correct? So if we had any members online, you can do that. If you're traveling or are unavailable to come to town hall, you could certainly join and participate in the meeting via the hybrid technology we have. We just take all our votes via roll call. At this time, Mr. Mercier can introduce himself and his firm.
Thank you, Doug. And thank you all for coming out. And Nadine, thanks for organizing all of this. So we're very pleased. We interviewed with the board, as you all know, and the board selected us to help in the process to find a successor to Powell, which will not be easy. You're one of the communities that has had some stability, and that's always good for potential candidates. They don't like to see communities turning over people every year and a half. And trust me, we have some of those that we deal with, and that puts a cloud over the community when we're doing recruitment, because typically they'll ask us what happened, and in many instances we're not sure what happened. But you don't have that situation, which is good. So the process that we spoke to with the select board is about a 12 to 16 week process. And myself and my partner Buzz are coming out there on Thursday to talk to, thankfully Nadine set this all up, to talk to all of your department managers. We do one-on-ones. We don't do groupthink, simply because we want to hear what's really happening from those individuals. We want them to be honest with us. Because it's so important for us as we start to look at candidates to understand what's happening in the community. And a lot of times you don't see that until you dig down. And that's the purpose of us talking to your department managers. And frankly, anybody else you meaning the appointing authority, want us to talk to. If you want us to talk to the school superintendent, you want us to talk to the school committee members or anybody else in the community, we will do that. You've got a good mix on the committee, as I understand it. Your committee, the town administrators, what we affectionately call the task, your town administrator screening committee. I see the police chiefs on there. We always want to talk to police chiefs. We want to find out what is happening from their perspective also. The other thing that was intriguing to us, Doug, and I apologize, Jim, you're going to be the chair, and Celeste, you're going to be the vice chair, and we'll be communicating with you pretty directly. But one of the things that we appreciated when you thought about this is you put the moderator on and the former moderator. And we think it's very important, and we find a lot of success in talking to moderators. They seem to have a good finger on the pulse of a community, and we've got two. So that's going to be helpful to us as we engage in some dialogue with them. So the first task is going to be this Thursday. Buzz and I are preparing a timeline that we don't have yet. We want to talk to Nadine and Powell, and I believe Doug is going to join us. So we want to talk to them first about the timeline. You and I are not surprised. We're in the holiday season, and we'll talk through that on this Thursday as to what that means. A lot of people are tied up around the holidays, especially towards the latter part of December. So that creates some issues. But the first task for us is to get an ad prepared and get it out there. And again, I'm not sure on the timing of that. We got to talk about that because we want to tie that into what your expectations are as a committee and as a town in moving forward for the replacement of Carl. Again, as I said, it's 12 to 16 weeks in general terms. That depends a lot on what type of engagement that the task wants in this process. The task being, again, the town administrator screening committee, because we have a process that we follow, and it's been pretty successful for us. So let me just explain that a little bit. So we have the ad. The ad is placed for about 30 days. In fact, 30 days, because that's what most of the ad venues require, is a 30-day ad, and we think it gives people sufficient time. to respond. Now, the problem again is the timing, because of the holidays and when it goes in. And surprisingly enough, you may be surprised by this, but a lot of municipal folks don't pay a lot of attention to the last 2 weeks in December if they're job seeking. So we got to talk that through and figure out what's the best timing on that. That doesn't preclude the fact that we could put it in sometime in December, early December, if possible, and give them a part of January, give them, meaning the candidates, a part of January to reflect and think about it. And the reason I say that is these are important decisions for municipal officials. As Doug alluded, MRI has been around a long time. I've been with them for almost 10 years now. I'm a retired town manager, town administrator, 30 plus years. I was also an elected board member in my hometown of Tingsboro, Massachusetts. So I was on the Board of Selectmen. So I've got that perspective. My partner, Buzz, has been in municipal government, pretty much all in Massachusetts for about 35 years. So, and he's been a manager, more a manager than administrator. I've been both. So we have that type of perspective we're thinking about. We've done a lot of communities. As we told your board, we're pretty selective in the communities we choose. We like a community of your size. In fact, we're doing a community pretty similar in Winchester, Connecticut, about 10,000 folks, not too far from you folks. And we've done a number of 10,000 plus or minus population communities, and we like that genre. We think that's, it's not too big, not too small. We think we have a pretty good feel for how your communities like to go forward. But we'll learn more as we talk to individuals in your community. So once the ad is placed, we get resumes. Everything comes to us, comes to MRI. And that's important in terms of confidentiality. We're well known. We've been around for over 30 years. We know a lot of folks. We do recruitments all over New England, but the majority of our recruitments, myself and Buzz, are in Massachusetts. We do what I like to say is the lower half. We do Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Our boss, Alan, and his team up in Plymouth, New Hampshire, they do New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine, albeit I've done some Vermont communities, I've done some Maine communities, but our focus is here in Massachusetts. So once the ad is created and placed, and that's a discussion we're going to have Thursday with Doug and the team, it's a 30-day it's a 30-day time frame. We generally will advertise in the 6 municipal associations in New England and the International City Managers Association, which is the professional equivalent of the highest end that managers engage in. Many of the managers, the management recruitments we go through are ICMA members. Some are actually credentialed managers, which is a very high standard for a manager to meet. And most of the managers that we deal with are either members or are credentialed members of the International City Managers. The reason we put it into the ICMA is it's international. It covers every place. And I think I might have mentioned to the board, we have gotten recruitments from Brussels, over in Europe, who saw it in the ICMA, and that individual was successful in landing a position here. And his point was, he was a former Navy commander, and his point was his family was in Rhode Island. He wanted to come home. And he eventually got hired by Portsmouth, Rhode Island as their town manager. And I got a knock on wood somewhere, he's still there. So the point is, the International City Managers Association is a recruitment tool literally internationally. And we do find people that are in other places in either the country or in other countries itself who make decisions that they want to come back to New England, wherever it may be. Could be Massachusetts, could be Vermont, wherever it happens to be. So it's a good recruitment tool. Everybody who's a professional in this field knows about ICMA, and they will likely go to that site to look for job openings. So that's the reason we put it in ICMA. And of course, the local ones will put it in the Mass MMA, the Connecticut Association of Municipalities, Rhode Island. And you will get some folks who are not that far from you, who may be in another state that might be interested. So, but that's a 30-day period. During that period, we will do some MRI will do some direct recruitment of people we know of that may have some interest. And I can tell you that we've already got some interest from a couple of people. They want to know some specifics we don't know yet, but we're keeping them in the loop. So we'll be ready to contact them once the close of the date is for the advertisement. We, as I mentioned, we hold all of the resumes that are submitted. Typically, in a search like this, well, let me preface that the field itself has changed. We used to get, I want to say, on the order of 40 or 50 resumes. We now get 25 to 35. And that's simply the nature of the beast with municipal government. It's happening everywhere. It's not just Massachusetts. It's really a nationwide issue. I don't have to tell you folks, you guys, for the most part, are involved. It's a difficult profession. It's a difficult job. And some people are choosing not to continue in the field. And that's unfortunate for all of us. But it is the reality of today. So, as I said, once the 30 days is over, and during those 30 days, by the way, we're going to be doing a lot of talking to individuals. As I said, we're scheduled next week to start discussing with some individuals. We're going to continue to do that, continue that dialogue with other folks that the select board may want us to talk to. And we're going to start to develop what we call a profile and challenge statement. In other words, the profile is of the community and what we hear back from people like you folks and others we're going to be talking to. And then we'll try to develop and the profile means what type of individual do you think can succeed in Southwick? You know the community better than we do. And so we want to pick your brains on exactly the type of individual who will succeed. Now, the positive and the negative is you've had a long-term town administrator who is very highly regarded. And, when we've done other towns that are coming off that type of scenario with long-term town managers, town administrators, invariably they tell us, clone him or her. And so that's not as easy as you think it is because you've been fortunate. So, we pick your brains. We try to develop that profile. Some people are looking for better communication skills in the position, and that's what they tell us to emphasize and those type of things. So we'll develop that. We'll develop a challenge statement, and we think we already know some of the challenges you and other communities are facing. We heard about the fiscal cliff and those type of things. I read the comments from your finance chair. But that's not unique. Towns are facing that. We know that, but we want to hear it from you folks. We want to hear it from the people in place in your community and what they think that all means going forward, because that's a challenge for any new administrator coming in. They're going to want to know what some of those challenges might be. And, as I said earlier, they're not different than a lot of other communities, but we try to refine those challenges so that we make it specific to Southwick. And that all shows up in the document called a profile and challenge statement. So we'll be developing that. That will be sent out and posted, but it'll be sent out to interested candidates. We will post it on our website. Once it's finished, we'll put it on your website. And it'll be accessible to anybody who wants to take a look at it, take a look at what the expectations might be for the person coming in, and we go from there. So once the resumes are received and the date to respond is closed, Buzz and I evaluate all of the individuals who submitted. So let's take, for instance, 30 people submit. And in our review, we determined that 15 of them have no kind of experience in municipal government. They're just searching for a position, and we make a determination that they're not qualified to fill the position of town administrator for Southwick. So having said that, let's say we have 15 people we think might be interesting for us to consider. We will then send those individuals what we call essay questions, and those essay questions are built around either issues involved with Southwick. We want them, the reason we do that is because we want them to do their research on the community. We're not looking for solutions. We want to see how their thought process works in solving problems. And we found that to be very useful. Most of the communities we deal with find those answers to be very useful. And interestingly enough, as the field has evolved as it has, not only in our lives, but in your lives, I mean, people are telling us, yeah, but AI can craft those answers and, ChatGPT and all that kind of, the issue for us is, well, they may be able to do that, but whoever the candidate is better read what they're writing, because we tell people like yourself, the task, ask questions about the answers they gave. And, if they didn't write it, they may find it a little difficult to answer those questions. So we then bring whoever responds, and we can tell you that, let's say 15 were sent out. 3, 4, 5 of those will drop out. They just don't want to do the work involved with answering questions. And it's generally only 3, maybe 4 questions, but it takes time to do that. So some people drop out. That's okay by us, because that tells us they're not as interested as we want them to be in the community. If they don't want to take the time to answer questions that we've asked them. So that's fine. Let's say we end up with 10 or 11 candidates. We then bring those candidates, all of them, to the task. And we don't ask you to interview all of them. We ask you to narrow down that field to the people you folks want to interview. It may be 6, it may be 7, but the ultimate intent at the end of this is for you guys, you folks, to interview those individuals and then recommend moving forward. Our suggestion is 3 or 4 members, not ranked, but 3 or 4 members that you think should move forward as finalists to the select board. All of your interviews as a task are done in the exec session. And that is very important to us, that all of this stays in exec session, because as you well know, you're in the public arena. Some of these folks may not have told their appointing authority that they're in other searches until, and everybody understands it, this is Massachusetts, until they get to finals, then they know their name is going to be out there and they will do what's appropriate in their current situation and advise their appointing authority they are a finalist in Southwick. So that's the process. Depending on how many the task committee wants to interview, it could be a couple of nights of interviews. If it's going to be 6 or 7, we don't recommend you do those all in one night. Some town administrator screening committees have said, we want to interview 5 people and we want to do it all on a Saturday. That's totally up to you. But again, we're early in the process here, so we don't have to make any decisions on timing or any of that. But that's the process going forward. By the way, when I said we'll bring you, let's say the 15, 11 or 12 who responded, you'll get everything. You'll see the essay responses, you'll see their resumes, you'll see their cover letters. We will do some background, peripheral background investigations into the people that some of whom we will know, and just give you in exec session a brief understanding of what we know about the individuals, and you can take it from there. And again, once you get those interviews completed and you decide who you want to move forward to the select board, your task is essentially over. And from our perspective, we will be there holding your hand all the way through this thing to make sure we get what both of us want to accomplish, and that's the best candidates we can for Southwick. So as I said, the timing is 12 to 16 weeks. We're working on that. We'll get more definition after Thursday. We want the board, the appointing authority, to see it first, obviously, and then we'll send it off if they approve it. And again, it'll be a draft. It's got to remain flexible for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is both your schedules, the appointing authority schedules, and the candidate schedules. Who knows what they may be doing in certain periods of this calendar year and as we go forward. So my guess is if we take the 12 to 16 weeks and we start an ad sometime in December into January, February, by March, we should know who you have as a potential town administrator, assuming all the scheduling can be done appropriately and on a fast track with both the TASC and of course the appointing authority. So that's our process. It's worked very well for us. We know it'll work well for you. And I'm open to questions, Doug. Whatever the committee wants to ask.
Questions?
I have a couple for the committee and then a couple for
Go ahead.
MRI. Thank you. The first is for the committee is to make sure that you look up and review Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 23A. It's one paragraph. If you'd like, I can send it to you, but
Please.
it's basically it's the basis in law that gives you the CAO. And so I think the appointment of our CAO is covered under Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 23A. It's really simple. Like I said, it's one paragraph, and I'll send it to everyone. It just gives you the basis for how a CAO position came to be or comes to be in towns like ours that don't have a charter. So it would be a good reference piece. Second, I would like to make sure that everyone has a copy of the current job description of the CAO.
That was gonna be my question.
That was exactly
We
what I
are
was gonna
working
say.
on that, and that, part of the meeting from this Thursday is, what would, and I'm sure we're all going to get a chance to look at that too, is what does the current CAO job description look like? And then I know the select board has had a couple conversations, and we need to continue that conversation. And it's going to be part of the outcome of some of the meetings with MRI as well, is what is the next CAO? What are some differences in that job description potentially that we need to accommodate? And so when you're interviewing candidates, you can look for, we might have a couple of characters, but when you're interviewing candidates, that what do you have in that person, and do they fit these qualifications?
Now,
that
where's
you're
the
looking for?
current one? Because I think it would be a good place to start.
We'll get that sent out to you. via
Email us
email.
the current one, then we can go from there. It'll just be good to kind of look at ahead of time.
Mhm.
And then we can kind of go from there.
And then just one thing that I just wanted to say, I've made no suggestions to MRI or to anyone else from the select board as far as any particular candidates whatsoever, by name or by title or anything. So just to be clear and transparent in that process. And then I had a question for MRI has there been any thought to, or in other previous searches for residency as to where a candidate resides, as far as if they accept a job that they would need to be either within the town of Southwick or a certain distance from the town of Southwick or something like that?
That's an important question. We're asked that a lot because, as you know, if you're looking at a field of candidates, making a move to another community is a major decision, and depending on where the current candidate is, number one. Number two, what their family situation is, if their kids are enrolled in a school that they're really happy with, and all that kind of stuff. It makes that decision a little bit more difficult if they're required to move to the community. most communities that we've dealt with are moving away from the residency requirement. And I know it's still a popular thing in some places, but most communities are moving away from that at this point, as long as the candidate is within a reasonable distance. If they're 4 hours away, that's a whole different story. They will have to move.
Well, I think that
Uh,
opens up the whole thing, like, and I was actually just reading an article today about it, is we want somebody, I mean, at least in my opinion, would want somebody who's not looking for a remote position.
Yeah.
You know, we
Agreed.
want a physical person.
Yeah, agreed. We've got a candidate who asked us interesting question that you brought up tonight, who asked us if there was a residency requirement in Southwick. The individual's not that far away from you and would consider, we didn't get into anything, would consider Southwick to be a full-time job, to your question, and not be totally remote. You cannot, my opinion, you cannot do the CAO position remotely. You can't. You've got to be there. Now, whether or not there's some flexibility there, on a Friday morning, you can work remotely, or whatever Monday, whatever it happens to be, that's between the appointing authority and the candidate. But clearly, we want that candidate, and I think Southwick wants that candidate to be in person.
Yeah, to me, there's two different issues there. One's residency, where is your domicile? And the other is terms of employment. And at the extreme, could they, use Zoom 4 days a week and show up 1 day a week? And I think the select board would have to be very clear on that, before you got very far into any discussion with a, potential hire.
I would.
Jim, to that, I totally agree with you. We will make it clear. As I said, both Buzz and I were in the position. I know you cannot do that position 3 or 4 days remotely. You cannot. It just can't work.
Well, and the other issue, and residency is a nice thing, but in this day and age, with couples, usually your candidates are going to have a significant other. They've got a job someplace, kids in school, all those types of things. So, those all have to be, I don't think you can draw a bright line on that. The downside from my experience is you sure as hell don't want to give somebody, a 15-month window where they can kind of try things out and then say, whoops, I guess I didn't want to be in Southwick after all, see you later. But a lot of that comes back to me terms of employment and not a hard and fast line, but clearly the board will have to make that decision before we get too far down the road.
Yeah. Jim, to that point, and Doug, there are communities, and we've had this discussion. We just finished Blackstone, for instance. Blackstone's about 10,000 people, southeastern Massachusetts area. And they did have a residency requirement in their charter, and they had a charter. They just removed it. And one of the candidates was talking to me, and he says, I live in Mendon. It's the next town over. And I would have had to move. So they subsequently got rid of that in their charter. But that's how, that's sort of a dangerous thing sometimes, the residency requirement. And again, I'm not making light of it. A lot of communities wanted it originally, but a lot of communities, as I said, the trend is moving away from that. What you frankly want is the best person possible. And the CAO position, CEO position, whatever it is, in your town it's a CAO, those are pretty important positions, and folks who take those positions know their obligations to the community. And to Jim's last point on, I'm going to try this and not like it, I mentioned earlier there's a code of ethics in the ICMA, which is the International City Managers. It's our professional association. that generally says, you know, it's ethically improper to leave a community within 2 years once you've been hired by an appointing authority. Now, that doesn't stop people from trying to do it, but they could run afoul of their own professional association, and the ICMA is it's pretty ethical and demands a lot of integrity in the membership, and that individual could be censured, for instance, if they do something like that. And you're probably familiar with professional associations. Engineers have them, teachers have them, all that kind of stuff. So if you run afoul of the organization you are a member of, you can do some damage to your career going forward.
Well, that's reassuring.
It's not perfect, Jim, but
No, I understand. Things happen, and sometimes it's mutual and so forth, but you know, you don't,
Right.
you certainly don't want to create an expectation that it's like, you know, try it out for a year, see how things go. And,
Yep.
you know, generally, you know, my experience, aside from, you know, being able to work from home remotely, is, you know, when people have to travel much more than 45 minutes to an hour one way to get to their job, that gets old. After, you know, 6 to 12 months. I mean, there's no magic number. And at that point, they will make the right decision, and move to where they need to be. But anyway,
Agreed.
Any other, you know, it's a good discussion. Anything else on this particular topic, residency versus?
I think that once we really have our pool of applicants, and I mean, our job and along with theirs is to sort through and really try to, you know, vet the character of these people and hopefully get a sense of exactly what you're asking. How, you know, dedicated would they be to the community if they were to get the job and come into our interviews? So I think, you know, I mean, we've been very fortunate here in Southwick where we've always had a really good team for the most part. All our department heads work together. Carl really helped facilitate a lot of that, you know, the way he worked with everybody. So I would think we're probably out, you know, looking for somebody that's going to keep with that flow.
Hey, that's a great point. That should come out in this document that the firm is putting together, because you know, to me, one of the expectations is, you know, it's not a, you know, 9 to 5 job. I see all of you guys out and about at community events and, you know, weekends and, you know, games over at the school and so forth. And again, it's going to be kind of tough for somebody to be more than 9 to 5 if they don't live somewhere, you know, in the nearby vicinity. But that's a good comment.
I agree. I think one of the reasons I brought it up was if to the point that was just brought up was, you know, if the applicant, one of the candidates was nearby, and they may have roots in that community with, you know, spouses and children in school. And, you know, I don't know that, just, you know, my opinion is I wouldn't make it a requirement they have to live in Southwick. Maybe, you know, but it should be part of the fact consideration as to, you know, someone who's applying that, you know, if they lived in, you know, 2 towns over or 3 towns this way. But if someone were taking the job from, say, Eastern Mass,
Blackstone.
you know, and moving to the area, you know, obviously, you know, I would strongly suggest that they look hard in Southwick, right? Because I think you become very vested in the community. Sure. And you can be vested in Southwick if you live in another community. We've been blessed. We've had, you know, chiefs and other positions that they live in adjacent communities, and there was just, they were the best candidate for the job. And there was no sense in making them either make a tough decision to not take a job that they'd be really, really good at and beneficial to the town, and uproot their family and what have you. So that was why I wanted to bring it up, because I wanted to get that out on the table and have that discussion. You know, and, you know, just lastly, from where, you know, we've been blessed, right? None of us have had to make that decision. 35 years Carl's been doing this. So, and I believe Carl relocated to Southwick when he took this job as the first CAO in the history of the town of Southwick. So, you know, it wasn't even a topic of consideration back then, but now, but I agree. I don't think anybody could do this job remote 3 days a week or 4 days a week or even 2 days a week. You know,
Yeah, we
there would
agree.
be an option, you know, I don't know, you know, how that would play out in town, even for a 1 day a week. I think it's going to be a more of a, you know, once in a while, sure, you could join meetings or do work at home. I do that all the time for my job when I need to squirrel away and do stuff in some peace and quiet. But I just think that was a good topic to bring up and kind of go over. And then the job description, I think, was the other. So,
Well, it's not like this office is small either.
no,
Got a good sized office, so.
Doug or Jim?
Yes,
Just a point. And I wanted to ask it because it helps us as we go through potential candidates. And it's probably not a fair question because you're coming off a Carl, a 35-year TA or CAO for your community. We have seen high quality candidates who are not traditional TAs. And by that, I mean, not necessarily from the private sector, albeit we've seen a few of those get placed and have done well. It's a different animal, as you know, municipal government versus private sector. It's different. But we have had some success with other professionals in municipal government assuming the role of a TA. And that could include, and I see the police chief there, we have placed a deputy chief of a large department in a smaller community. And he's working out very well because the skill sets, when you think about it, of somebody who has managed a large department, in fact, he had more employees under him than the town had in total that he went to. His budget, in fact, was larger than the town's budget of the town he went to. The HR skills, he was dealing with all the HR issues within his department. The finance issues, he prepared the budget for the department. So my point is that there are some transferable skills. And of course, he was clearly defined as a leader in our mind. And the town thought the same thing, and they engaged him. And he's still there. I got to knock on wood somewhere. We've also placed, and just recently, and it's all public, so you can look it up. We just placed a director of facilities and recreation out of Wareham, Massachusetts, and who said it? Jim, you said it? In Blackstone. Don't try to steal him. He's a younger individual. He told us very clearly his next step is to be a town administrator or a town manager. It's what he wants to do. And I can tell you, and you can probably watch it on YouTube, during his interview, I want to tell you he had no votes going in. They voted 5-0 to hire him, the select board. He just impressed them with his knowledge, his enthusiasm. And by the way, that's a key component to think about. Somebody who's enthusiastic about the profession. You can learn a lot of the things that need to be done in a community. But if you don't have the enthusiasm and the passion, you're probably not going to succeed. So, but that's a recent success of ours. We have placed public works directors into communities as TAs, and they have been successful. So my point to the committee is don't just shut the door to, and we'll talk you through this, to candidates who are not the quote traditional candidates you would normally see. And that's not quite fair to you folks because you haven't seen a traditional
I was going to say, we don't know
35 years.
We don't know
what
that.
central casting usually sends out for these things. So you got an advantage there.
Yeah.
We already understand they're not going to look like Carl Steinhardt's younger sibling.
He does have a twin.
Does it?
He does. Yeah.
That's scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We taught him how to sign Carl's name in an emergency.
I'm not sure you want to say that in public session.
I actually forgot that I did that.
Other questions from the committee? We've got Bob here and, good discussion so far.
And I did want to just call one thing to note. I did notice that, on the list, planning board chair, Mike Dougherty, is not here with us tonight. That's where I was coming up with the even number of folks. So he is also on this, committee as well. I'm sure he had, some other.
So he needs to bring coffee and refreshments to the next meeting. Is that how it works?
Well, I guess I got the next one for being late, but the meeting after. he's
Well,
that guy.
that's the ultimate one. It's not being here.
But, yes, so I think, what should be our next step from, we have a meeting this Thursday in Town Hall, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then,
And Doug, that's gonna be with all your department managers and yourself and Nadine and Carl. What we'll need, Nadine, I hate to say it, but we're gonna need the contact info for your task, your screening committee, whether it's emails or phones. Okay,
Lisa should have that.
okay, we must have it. We got you all here tonight, so we must have that.
I don't know whether she's got cell phone numbers for everybody.
It is when you swear in the desk.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're self-incriminating over with the town clerk. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Very good. What else do you need from us, Bob?
nothing, Jim. The only thing I'll reemphasize is if in fact, and we've had this happen in a couple of our search committees, some people are on the town's email system. We need to be a little bit careful of that because, as you know, town emails are public documents, and we got to be careful about communicating some things that may be sensitive, I guess is the way I'll leave it. So I may need some alternate, if you have them, emails for the members of the committee. You know, the board is the appointing authority, so we'll talk through that with you, Doug, and the other board members. We're going to talk to the other two board members also, and we're likely, Jim, now that it's your committee, we're likely going to talk to all of you individually before a joint meeting, and just to get your sense going forward. And as I said, we like to do that individually because we like to hear what you really think.
Okay.
All right.
I have one thing just for my own education. Has the actual job description for Carl's position been drafted yet?
Not updated.
Okay.
We have the
So my
existing.
question is then, so does he have, what we're gonna get is like an older one version of his? Because how does it kind of conflict, or does it, with your job description? The reason I say that, because when yours was developed, right?
Mhm.
I think some of the roles that Nadine now fills was at one time responsibility of Carl. And
Yeah, but I don't think those are, from what I recall, I don't think they're specifically spelled out. I like
but
that,
they may
but-
need to be.
But yeah,
Just trying to.
we'll make sure that we don't overlap too much.
Why don't we just include in the packet of information that we send out, we'll send the assistant CAO job description out with it, just so you have it
We
for
can do
reference.
that too.
Has anyone been on one of these types of committees before?
Fire chief.
The last one, you were on for the deputy, okay,
Yeah, we can do that.
yeah. Celeste?
No.
Jim?
Well, I was involved with hiring Carl, but there was never anything like this. And Zanola, for what that's worth, but
That's
nothing, as, disciplined as the process here. Let me throw something out, kind of a trial balloon, and see, what the how the committee feels about it, just to give Bob kind of a sense of the committee. Obviously, not much is going to happen the last 2 weeks of December and, probably first few days of January. Aside from that, my feeling, without rushing the process, but my feeling is that we're eager to get on with the process. If that involves weekly meetings at some point, we would do that. Trial balloon here, folks. If you disagree, I want you to say that. But we don't want to, extend the process any longer than it rationally needs to be. Everybody good with that approach?
I think.
I'm the only one who's retired here, I think, so,
I think with as much that Carl's gonna have to pass on to this person as well,
yeah,
it's gonna be a
good point.
So. I think-
That's exactly what I was
Good point.
thinking.
So I have a question. I know they're saying 12 to 16 weeks to find someone. When does Carl actually leave his position?
End of March.
So we have,
His last day in the office is.
so essentially we have till the end of March. So you want to be, like you're saying, okay.
We're gonna have a little bit of time for him.
Yeah,
You wanna have
there's
about a
some
month?
overlap. I hope.
But I'm
Yeah.
thinking, budget process gets going fast and furious, about, mid to late February, so, other stuff going on. So that's just a sense, Bob. Again, that doesn't mean, cut corners or anything. But I know, some groups you interact with probably say, yeah, if we meet once a month, that'll be fine. We'll get there. I think this is an action-oriented group here, and we'd like to pursue the process, as diligently as we can.
Comment? I'll make a comment, Jim?
Please do.
So, as I said, we've dealt with so many of these groups and committees, and some committees are more laid back, I'll put it that way, and being kind. Some committees are more aggressive. We deal with both. We're not saying one's right, one's wrong. One of the things that potentially, not always, potentially delays the process going forward is what role the TASC wants to play in actual approval of documents, for instance. And in one community, I can tell you, we were delayed a number of times because the committee wanted approval on what the essay questions were, approval on the profile and challenge statement. And as you know, if you want approval from your committee, you got to call a meeting.
Yeah.
And get your committee together and all that kind of stuff. The way some communities, and we're not objecting to either one of them, some committees say, that's why we hired you, Bob and Buzz. You do the essays, you do the profile. We want to see candidates. That's what we want to see. And the way they talk to us about it, you guys are going to interview all of my members of my committee. You're going to get a sense as to who we are and what we like. So think about that as you prepare the profile and the challenge statement, and we move from there. Some committees wanted to wordsmith, to be kind. They wanted to wordsmith the documents, and as you know, you get it, your committee wordsmiths it, sends it to us, we fix it, we send it back to you for final, and you're 3 weeks out through that process.
I don't see any English teachers sitting at the table here. If there's somebody that missed out on that, please let me know. But I don't think this is a wordsmithing committee. Again, that was part of what I was telling you. I would propose that as you get those documents ready to go, that you share them with us via email. Put a comment period on it. Say if you've got comments, let us know. Copy to your committee members. If we really were violently opposed to something, we could call a meeting. We could slow the process down a little bit. But I don't want to see us get involved in wordsmithing and trying to tell the select board what it is they want or that type of thing. I don't, as Doug outlined our responsibility, I don't think that's our responsibility. I think that's more of a constructive thing for the select board to be doing. But we'd like to be in the loop and see these things as they're getting done. Again, I assume that the town is spending a significant sum for you guys to write essay questions. if we're tight with a buck out here, if we wanted to save some money, they probably would have had us do that. But you know, so that would be my sense: is email us stuff.
Yeah.
Put a comment period on it, like, you know, we need to hear back from you in 3 days.
Yeah.
Most people, if they feel passionately about something, they'll let you know. Worse, you know, if there's a real impasse, then we'll have a meeting and thrash it out. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, the
Everybody
final
good
comment
with
I'll
that?
make on, yeah, the final comment I'll make, Jim, is you are a public entity now, and your meetings are posted when you meet and all that, and you're on the public email system. So if, take that scenario you just talked about. So if we complete a profile and challenge statement, and we'll probably send it to you, Jim, as the chair, and probably your vice chair, Celeste. And then you can distribute it, but all those comments, you cannot engage in a discussion on the email system with your member. You know that. Yeah.
I understand that we have to be careful about that. But again, it's one thing if there's a particular word that Bob doesn't like and he emails back and says, you know, I wish you'd use, you know, police instead of cop. Well, fine. We'll fix that. But we don't need to have a meeting to go through with stuff like that, because I'm pretty sure I know a couple of the people here real well that they'll get disengaged if we misuse their time.
I think so much comes down to, in the interview process, is the conversation with the person.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Right.
Obviously we'd like to, you know, have the essay questions before we go into the interview, but I'm pretty
And
much
you
a
will.
person. We'll talk, see what you think of a person before.
And Doug will make sure I don't break any laws.
Not a problem, but I think, you know, and to that point, I think one of the, I just survived, for lack of a better term, the master plan advisory subcommittee. And we would go 2 full meetings to make a flyer. And it was painfully torturous at times. So I 100% agree that, you know, I think that the whole goal here is to get the right candidates in front of this subcommittee, and then hopefully to get the right candidates in front of the select board to make a great appointment for the town. So I'm not English major, and I agree with you. I don't see the need to call meetings to review a document. I think it's going to, and you're right, it's going to be the candidates and the interviews having come through. I had done I think I was on the deputy chief search committee, and I had been on the fire chief subcommittee prior to that. And it really was about the conversations, because you learned an awful lot when you had those interviews. So I guess it's like God and your enemy in the Marines, right? It's not the Marines' job to decide, it's just to arrange the interview, right? So I think that's where we're going to really do a great job.
So before we do go into like a day of it, or just have all the interviews, we'll have all their documents so we can review them at home before we come
absolutely.
in. Right. Okay.
That's right.
That's really important.
That's right.
Because sometimes it takes me a little while to read through things. My short attention spans, but
different subcommittees have different ways of doing it. And I'm sure MRI is going to give us some great advice in this space. Like we had one where we kind of had a set of questions that we asked every candidate. Because those were like the main objectives of the search committee as far as sending those candidates on. But then it's a conversation, right? You know, questions move off of that based on their answers to get what you want to get.
Will we as a committee, or coming from MRI, have some set questions we want to stick with? And that's probably a separate meeting once we get closer to that.
To that question, Lisa, we provide a set list of in today's world approved questions. You got to be a little careful in HR and the questions you ask today. It's a little different than it used to be. But these have all been run through the Attorney General's office and all that kind of stuff. So we have those list of questions, and we will talk you through that. You don't have to accept them, but we know that they're approved and can be asked, I guess is the way I'll leave it.
I would think, and I don't want to, jump the process here, Bob, but I would think that before we did our first interviews, we would have an in-person meeting like this and plan the interview process and approve the questions and who's going to ask this and, you know, who's going to keep time and those types of things that you have to kind of be on the same, you know, same playbook before you bring your first candidate in.
Yep, we're all on the same page. We'll do that,
Okay.
Jim.
Okay. Anything else that you want to tell us tonight?
Just recap. I don't want to scare anybody. It's a tough time in municipal government. But we'll find somebody. We'll find somebody who is good and can do the job. And then it's up to you to reach an agreement with that person, not you, Jim, but Doug and his group to reach an agreement. You know, it's changing all the time, and hopefully it starts to turn the corner a little bit, because I've watched some of your meetings. The discourse at the local level, if you watch some communities, is tough. And I can tell you, and I know Doug's on this, and be careful going forward for any meeting you hold. People are watching. People watch meetings, and we've had a couple of candidates about a year ago in a good town. I thought a good town, where they watched a couple of, no offense, Doug, but a couple of select board meetings, and said, "I don't want any part of that. I don't want any part of that. It gets nasty." And most towns have some civility and decorum and all that kind of stuff, and you know, some don't, and it hurts them. It hurts them in their recruitment.
Right.
So is it up to Celeste or me to tell the select board that they have to behave themselves? Or maybe Nadine down here at the end of the table. That's an HR thing.
Jim, that sounds like an executive decision you have to make.
You know, for all of the, it's a good point, but for all of the discourse we've had over the last several years, and some transition on the select board, we've had 2 out of the 3 members replaced in the last, or change over in the last 2 elections.
Yeah.
I think we've had, it's definitely less than 5. If I were to guess the number, I'd say it was 3 non-unanimous votes on the Board of Selectmen in this current term. And in the previous year, I know the number, I believe it was 2 or 3 also for the entire year. What we've been struggling to do, but productively so, is to come to consensus. And frankly, the composition of this search panel was a culmination of good-spirited debate, but fair and honest and open debate, and we arrived where we are. We had, you know, I had a thought in mind as to what the TASC should look like. Another member had another idea for membership, and another member didn't want to have one. They wanted to interview every candidate. And so we kind of, you know, through just deliberative process, we talked it through and came to a consensus, which we all agreed on and voted unanimously to form this sub and to put the people on it that are on it. And I think it's, you know, I think that's indicative of where the select board is. So from, you know, glad we're not doing this search 3 years ago, right? But you know, I think that people watch the select board meetings. I think, you know, it's deliberative. We have disagreements, but that's good government, right? If we all agreed on every single thing, that wouldn't be good government. So
Exactly.
Yeah, I think if people watching the select board meetings, you'll see us disagree, but you'll get that on any board.
That's why you have a board.
Exactly. Or else we would just have, you know, one guy making all the decisions and that would be it. So yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? Bob, anything else you want to close with? That was a good point. I'll make a closing comment if you're all set.
I am all set, and I thank you.
Okay. We look forward to working with you and your firm on this process. I am going to predict that when you get out here on Thursday and talk to people, I think we've got a really good story to tell here in Southwick. A lot of very positive things going on. Doesn't mean that we don't have some, disagreements and some friction points and so forth. But I look around at other communities around here, and they've got the same stuff going on. And you talked about the transition here in town government over the last couple of years. But my take on that is the process is working. The community got divided over a particular issue, but at the end of the day, the majority prevailed. And that's how it's worked here for 250 plus years, and that's the best we can do. So I think we've got a good story. Do we have our disagreements and so forth? Sure, but no more than any other place that I know of. So
absolutely.
So we will is at this point we have to kind of sit back and wait for some things to happen. Is there any reason that we should schedule our next meeting?
My suggestion is let us meet on Thursday with your team, and then we'll come out of that with some ideas as to, I don't want you to meet for no reason.
No, we don't. No, we don't want to. We don't want to. So, okay, we will leave it at that. You will do your work with the select board and department heads on Thursday, and we'll have email addresses and so forth here so we can communicate with each other. And when it is time for another meeting, we'll try to get that up and scheduled a week or so in advance. I know open meeting would allow us to do that quicker, but I think a week is a good objective in terms of scheduling meetings. So
okay,
with that,
that's terrific. Yep.
Do we need to go? One more. Okay.
Just for food for thought, Mr. Chairman, is there a day of the week that works better for most people? Like typically Mondays are lousy for me. I have another commitment at 6 o'clock on Mondays.
Wednesdays are the only day that don't work well for me.
Sorry.
Wednesdays do not work well for me.
So I just wanted to put it out there for planning purposes.
So you're no Monday, you're no Wednesday. How does Tuesday work?
I'm hit or miss, so I'm kind of flexible. Depends on what's going on. So
Tuesday work? Let's plan on, we'll go for Tuesday. I assume that there's always meeting rooms available here somewhere or another.
This room is almost always available except for Monday nights.
Okay. So let's plan on, we'll do the best we can. If we get into a bind on something, we need to have a meeting, then we'll go by best available by email. I'm a big email user. So I'll probably over communicate with email to keep stuff in front of you. Don't expect a lot of phone calls from me. It's no one answers anyway.
If you called me, I would answer.
Thank you. So with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
I'll second.
And do we need to roll call that around the table?
Unless you have a dissenting vote to adjourn.
If anybody objects to adjourning the meeting, we are adjourned. Thank you, Bob. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Look forward to it.
I'll send out